The sound of my front door unlocking from the outside is something I will never forget because I was standing right there inside my own house when it happened, and for a second I actually thought I imagined it until the handle slowly turned and the door opened just a few inches like someone testing if they could walk right in, and that is when my heart started pounding because nobody except me and my wife had a key and she was not home yet. Or at least that is what I thought. And right? Behind that door, I heard a voice loud, confident, and completely out of place saying, "See, I told you he is hiding something," and that was the moment I realized this was not just a mistake. This was someone trying to enter my home like they had every right to do it. And if you think that sounds insane, just wait, because what happened next turned everything upside down, and trust me, you do not want to miss a second of this. And before we go further, if you enjoy stories where people push too far and face real consequences, hit like and subscribe to Karen Stories daily because this one gets intense fast. I stepped toward the door, slowly keeping my voice steady, and asked, "Who is there?" And the response came instantly sharp and almost proud. "This is the Homeowners Association. We received complaints and we are conducting an inspection." That sentence alone made my blood boil because there is no world where an HOA gets to unlock your door and walk into your house without permission. But the person on the other side clearly believed otherwise. I pulled the door open fully, and standing there was a woman in her late 40s, dressed like she was about to attend a meeting rather than break into someone's home. Her posture straight, her expression smug, like she had already decided she was right before the conversation even started. Behind her stood 2 police officers. And that is when it clicked. She had called them here like she was leading some kind of investigation. She introduced herself as the HOA president and immediately started pointing at me, saying, "We have reports of suspicious activity inside this property and failure to comply with community rules." And she said it like she expected the officers to back her up without question, but instead they looked at me, then at her, clearly unsure of why they were even there. I asked her one simple question: "Who gave you the right to unlock my door?" And she did not hesitate. She said, "As HOA president, I have authority to ensure compliance and safety within the community," and she actually believed that she said it with confidence, like she had done this before and gotten away with it. The officers shifted slightly. One of them asked her if she had a warrant or consent, and she brushed it off, saying HOA authority covers inspections when violations are suspected, and that was when I knew this was about to get serious, because she was not just wrong, she was completely out of line. What she did not know was that my wife worked in law enforcement, and not just in any position. She was someone who understood the law inside and out, someone who had dealt with people abusing authority before. And the only reason she was not there at that moment was because she was finishing her shift. I tried to keep things calm. I told the officers I did not consent to any entry and that the door had been unlocked without my permission, and they nodded, taking that seriously. But before anything could move forward, Karen stepped closer, raising her voice, saying, "You cannot hide whatever you are doing. We have the right to inspect this property." And she actually tried to push past me into the house. That was the moment everything crossed the line. I stepped in front of her, blocking the doorway, and told her clearly, "You are not coming in." And for the first time, her expression shifted from confidence to irritation, like she was not used to being told no. Neighbors had started gathering outside, drawn by the raised voices and flashing lights, and you could feel the tension building because nobody expected something like this to happen in a quiet neighborhood. Karen turned back to the officers, trying to regain control of the situation, saying, "You see, this is exactly what I was talking about. He is being defensive. He must be hiding something." And I almost laughed because the logic made no sense, but she was so convinced of her own authority that she could not see how wrong she was. The officers asked her again if she had any legal basis for entry, and again she dodged the question, repeating the same claims about HOA rules and community standards. And at that point, it was clear they were starting to lose patience. Then everything changed in a single moment, because behind me I heard the sound of keys at the door from inside the house, and before anyone could react, the door behind me opened wider, and there she was, my wife, still in full police uniform, stepping into the doorway with calm eyes and a presence that immediately shifted the entire situation. Karen froze completely, like her brain could not process what she was seeing, because the person she thought she had authority over was now standing there in uniform, representing the very law she had been trying to twist. My wife looked at the officers first, then at Karen, then back at me and asked one simple question: what is going on here? And I explained quickly and clearly, and with every word, Karen's confidence disappeared more and more. Officers straightened immediately, recognizing her, and the tone of the entire scene changed from confusion to control in an instant. And Karen, who had been loud just seconds ago, suddenly had nothing to say, because for the first time she realized she was not in charge of anything, and the situation she created was about to come crashing down around her. My wife stepped forward just enough to stand beside me, and the calm in her voice carried more weight than anything Karen had said all morning. She asked again, "Who unlocked this door?" And this time there was no confidence left in Karen's answer. She tried to explain herself, but the words came out slower, weaker, like she was realizing each second how serious this had become. One of the officers asked her directly if she had entered the property without permission, and after a long pause, she admitted she used a spare key that she claimed was held by the HOA for emergencies, and that made everything worse because there was no emergency, no danger, no reason for her to even touch that lock. My wife nodded once, then explained in a clear, steady tone that what she had done could be considered unlawful entry and abuse of authority, and hearing that out loud changed the atmosphere completely. The neighbors who had gathered started whispering, and even the second officer stepped back slightly, like the situation had just shifted into something much bigger. Karen tried one last time to justify it, saying she was protecting the community and enforcing rules. But the problem was those rules stopped at the front door, and everyone there knew it now. The officers asked her to step away from the entrance, and she hesitated just for a second before finally moving back, and in that moment, the power she thought she had was gone, completely replaced by uncertainty and fear. My wife asked me if anything had been touched or taken, and I told her no. But the fact that someone had unlocked our door without permission was enough on its own, and she agreed immediately because privacy and safety are not things you get to bend for convenience. The officers began documenting everything, asking questions, taking notes, and the same woman who had walked up acting like she owned the place now stood quietly answering them with none of that earlier attitude left. Neighbors kept watching, some shocked, some quietly satisfied, because it was clear this was not the first time Karen had pushed too far, but it was the first time she had been stopped in a way she could not control. Before leaving, the officers informed her that this incident would be reviewed and that any further action from the HOA would need to stay within legal limits. And hearing that felt like a line being drawn. For the first time since we moved there after they left, the street slowly returned to normal, but the energy was different. Lighter. Like something had been lifted, and Karen walked away without saying another word. No excuses, no arguments, just silence. Inside the house, my wife closed the door and looked at me for a moment, and we both knew this was not just about one incident. It was about making sure it never happened again. And from that day forward, things changed. The HOA stopped sending aggressive notices, stopped making threats, and suddenly became very careful with every step they took, because now they understood that authority is not something you pretend to have. It is something you are held accountable for. For me, the biggest relief was knowing that my home felt like my home again, a place where no one could just walk in thinking they had the right. If you made it this far, tell me in the comments what you would have done in that situation, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it, because sometimes all it takes is one moment for the truth to come out, and when it does, everything changes.